Welcome to today's edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show podcast.
Third hour of Clay and Buck gets going right now. We are going to talk about some of the big takeaways from the last 24 hours in politics, including where things stand right now after the disastrous for Democrats debates that occurred last night. Oz Fetterman, Hochul, Zeldin, and among others. There's some other debates too. Whitmer and Dixon. So in all cases, the Republican, I think, did a substantially better job making the case and helped himself or herself, as the case may be. Also wanted to just take a moment here to tell you the news that broke today that the Waukesha Christmas parade mass murderer Darrell Brooks has been found guilty on all 76 charges. And one of the victims' families yelled, "Burn in hell." This guy represented himself, is clearly an evil individual. And the media, because he does not fit a storyline that the Democrat-aligned media likes to spend time on, has not given this much coverage at all. But this was a mass murder committed by somebody who Clay had been on the record, essentially, with social media and things he had written as being full of anti-white rage. And he drove his car specifically to kill as many people as possible at a Christmas parade. And yet, how many even know that this trial was going on? Just goes to show you once again, the media believes its job is not to report facts, but to support narratives of the left.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Look, if there's a school shooter who is a white kid, it is top story forever. We just had a school shooting that got almost no attention because the perpetrator was not white. And this is, unfortunately, the identity politics laden.
St. Louis, right?
Yeah, St. Louis. The identity politics laden era in which we currently live, which is, it's a story if the identity of the victim or the identity of the perpetrator fits a preferred narrative. Look, the Darrell Brooks story, unfortunately, I think was motivated to a large extent by the Kyle Rittenhouse coverage. It happened really close, in close proximity to Kyle Rittenhouse being found not guilty. And Buck, you and I know huge percentages of the American public still believe that Kyle Rittenhouse shot and killed a bunch of black people during that self-defense act. In fact, huge percentages of people didn't even know until the very end of that trial who the people who had been shot actually were, or that they were violent felons who were previously engaging in indefensible acts. And so this story would be a monstrous feature event if it had been reversed. If you'd had a crazy white guy instead of a crazy black guy mowing down innocent people at a Christmas parade, Joe Biden would have immediately made the trip. I don't think Joe Biden, I think I'm correct in this, Buck, I don't think Joe Biden ever made it to Waukesha. I think they said his schedule was too busy. He couldn't ever make it there. And I think, unfortunately, Darrell Brooks is crazy and clearly insane. And we haven't talked about this trial a lot. It's going on for several days. But he was motivated, I believe, to a large degree based on his social media posts, media coverage that antagonized and drove further wedges between people of different backgrounds. And he snapped and decided he wanted to kill a bunch of white people, and the media pretended it didn't happen.
So he is going away on all 76 charges. Just wanted to bring you the latest on that news story. And now, switching gears here to some more of what was said last night in the Hochul debate. For people who, Hochul Zeldin, should call it really the Zeldin debate because he kicked her butt. The people who lived in New York City during the pandemic know exactly what I'm talking about. We were subjected to the worst kinds of heavy-handed idiocy, and people lost their jobs for not getting a shot that, beyond any doubt, does not stop the spread, does not work very well for anyone, in fact, against the virus, if in fact it works at all for most of the people who get it. And yet, for me, there are some things that would just be disqualifying. If a Republican had said this, I don't care where they are, I would say Other people can go and do what they want to do. I would not be able to cast a ballot for any person who said this, that in the aftermath of firing of thousands of people in New York State from their jobs for vaccine refusal, Kathy Hochul tells everybody she would do it all again. Listen to this.
You've been an election denier, a climate change denier. You and Donald Trump were the masterful COVID deniers. We are dealing with a real crisis. And the more people get vaccinated, get those shots in arms, and I would do it all over again what I did last year, that mandate for healthcare workers.
I would do it all over again, she says, Clay. The mandate for healthcare workers. I hope that the families of nurses and doctors and some of the nurses and doctors themselves who lost their jobs because they didn't want to get a shot that they didn't need. Maybe it was a nurse who was trying to get pregnant or had concerns about, what this might do to fertility or any number of things, or just oppose the authoritarian lunacy of it all. I hope they all understand that not only did did Kathy Hochul, pretty close, do this, but she says she would do it to you all again, knowing that she was wrong on everything. She won't admit that, but she knows because it's beyond doubt.
She had the vaccine pendant on her necklace, which is still one of the craziest things that I have ever seen. I don't even know where she got that made. And today, Buck, in addition to her disastrous performance last night in the debate against Lee Zeldin, today, and I believe we have this audio ready, she came out and said kids need to get their masks back on because of this respiratory virus that's going around. Now, a lot of parents out there are going to understand what I'm talking about, but a lot of others may not have paid attention. Because so many kids were isolated and not around other kids, there's actually major issues now, unfortunately, with very young children when it comes to their immune system, because if you have had young kids, you know they're called oftentimes snot-nosed kids for a reason. Kids always have colds. Their noses are always running. They are passing viruses back and forth all the time when they are young, and that's how you're developing a strong immune system. Well, a lot of these crazy people kept their kids from circulating around any other kids. They kept them locked up in the house. They pulled them out of school. And now we're seeing a massive increase in respiratory virus and also in the flu. In addition to COVID, it's all one big mess now. And Kathy Hochul's defense, what does she think needs to happen? Young kids need to put masks back on. This is what she said today. It's not going away.
Infants as young as 6 months old have been known to contract this. So it's hard to keep kids safe. Think about the fact that a year ago, before a year ago, a lot of kids were wearing masks in a daycare center or in schools, and that did give them some level of protection. We're not mandating this, but we're saying parents, you got other kids, you got kids in school, preschool, and you got a baby at home. You really might just want to take these extra precautions. And by now, kids are more socialized to the idea of wearing a mask. It's not as strange to them. It's not as like, what is this all about? There's really cute masks out there. I've seen a lot of them. So that's something I'm encouraging all parents to consider for their children right now. And we're talking about how we can stop this spread.
Cute masks.
It's never going away.
This abject moron says, yeah, they're so cute. It's so cute to have kids uncomfortable and harassed. Remember, if they're putting the masks on them, there are going to be adults who are enforcing this, even if it's, they're going to say, oh, well, you got to keep it on because your parents want you to have it. It is completely unacceptable. It was. I think everyone needs to be reminded of this because you and I even get people like, oh, it's over. Why do you guys still talk about it? It is not over. It is not over until everyone sees that they were wrong and until they have lost political power. It is not over. They will bring some of this back in some places in the country, and they will also try to pretend they didn't do these things that they did. They abused children as a matter of state policy. They made people get off of planes because small children couldn't keep their masks on. They made little kids in New York eat their lunches outside in 35-degree weather and told them to mask up between bites. They policed that like gulag prison guards of little children. And the Democrat politicians who push this and the school administrators and the teachers union thugs who pushed it and went along with it should all be ashamed, but they won't be. They should be held accountable, though, which maybe, Clay, they will be. That's what we're finding out.
That's why we've been beating the drum on this election has to be a reckoning. Because they will, if they are not completely and totally defeated, they will bring back masks the minute that the midterms are over that they believe politically they can get away with it. They are petty, tyrant, authoritarians. They got a taste for what that power feels like, and they will bring it back the instant they can. And you heard her setting the groundwork there. Well, the kids are already used to it. Buck, I thought you talked really eloquently about this. You had a speech impediment when you were young. And what we are learning, a lot of speech and pathology teachers and trainers and everybody else out there is pointing out that young kids need to see lips move, many of them, in order to learn how to speak themselves. And we have got a massive education deficit, not only because of schools not being in person, but also because young kids wore masks, and so did their teachers, and they weren't able to learn in person like they would have been in other years. She's doubling and tripling and quadrupling down because she is an imbecile on failed policies, to say nothing of the fact that they don't work, right, in the first place, yet they will bring them back.
Right. That's important to remind everybody of how crazy this all is. It's not as though they're clinging to as Fauci would say, a mitigation measure or an intervention that is effective at limiting the spread of the virus. That is a lie. Masking did not work. The people that were all mask maniacs, they may just think that they can go on with their lives and, never admit what a bunch of idiots they are. Doesn't work. It never worked. There's a reason why we didn't do this for our whole lives until now. Because it doesn't mean it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything as a means of trying to stop the spread of this virus. We've all seen this now. And yet they're doing something that would be excessive and authoritarian, even if it had some real impact on the virus. And it has no impact on the virus, and they're still trying to do this anyway. She still says mask up the kids. I mean, Kathy Hochul she's a disaster. A disaster. Yes. She is, as a politician, what John Fetterman's debate performance was last night.
And that's why, for everybody out there, we just had Heidi Gernal on in Colorado. If you are a person who believes that there needs to be consequences for all the things that Democrats got wrong the last 2 years, this is a reckoning election. And you need to show up, and you need to make sure your friends and family show up. The only way, Buck, that anything changes is if Democrats believe there are political consequences for their idiocy. That's the only way they're abandoning masks. That's the only way that they are abandoning mandates and COVID shots and everything else, is if the American public says no more. That's what this election has to be about.
We've got Senator Ted Cruz going to be joining us in just a few minutes. Talk about his experience getting ambushed on The View, but he handled it. We'll get to that in a moment. While liberals may have miscalculated the topic of abortion in their midterm election strategies, there are plenty of state governments working to ensure that abortions for all points of a pregnancy are here to stay. At least one organization is focused on helping the unborn children out there, the preborn children, right now. It's called Preborn Pregnancy Clinics. Preborn has rescued hundreds of thousands of babies by introducing them to their mothers on ultrasound. That act of kindness alone often allows for an immediate connection. We want to help Preborn, which is a nonprofit organization operating on donations from individuals that believe life starts at conception. Our goal is to rescue 40,000 babies with donations that pay for ultrasounds. One ultrasound is just $28, and now through a match, your gift is doubled. Any gift will help, and all donations are tax deductible. Give what you can, and here's how you can do so. It's so easy. Pick up your cell phone, dial pound 250, and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250. Dial that on your phone and say baby, which will connect to a person who will help with your donation. Or you can donate online. That's what I did. So straightforward. Just go to preborn.com/buck. That's preborn.com/buck. Your donation can literally help save babies' lives today. Please help Preborn with this mission.
Hey, Ben Ferguson here, and if you've ever wanted to know what's actually happening in Washington, D.C., what our options are to fight back against the Biden regime, and how you can get involved, well, now there's a way to do it 3 days a week with an amazing senator by the name of Ted Cruz. That's right. Verdict with Ted Cruz is now expanding to 3 days a week, and I'm going to be his co-host. We would love for you to join us as we pull back the curtain and fight to hold the Biden regime accountable. You want to know what the options are in Washington to hold not only Biden accountable, but even Hunter Biden. You want to know what's happening with foreign policy, with Ukraine and Russia. You want to know what's happening when it comes to gas prices. 3 days a week, you'll hear from the top conservative senator in Congress, Senator Ted Cruz. So be sure to listen to Verdict with Ted Cruz on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Download it now.
Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us as we roll through the Wednesday edition of the program. Buck, I haven't even given the update on the polling numbers right now. The polling numbers are good, but I was going to say the gambling odds are even better. So we have never seen. I tweeted during this, and I know we were texting during the Fetterman and Oz debate. We've never seen a race move like this race has moved from a gambling market perspective. And what I mean by that is when that debate started, these two guys were nearly dead even. Within 10 minutes of the debate beginning, Oz had become a prohibitive favorite. And as a result, Republicans are now prohibitive favorites to control the Senate next year. And we're seeing a lot of interesting moves. Blake Masters is now favored to win in the gambling markets in Arizona. Herschel Walker is the favorite in Georgia. And Oz is a substantial favorite. We've been talking for a long time about Adam Laxalt is a big favorite as well. So I think Republicans are going to end up with 53 Senate seats. And it also is putting on the table New Hampshire, Colorado. Great article about in Politico this morning. I was reading it early. Producer Allie sent it to us about potentially Tiffany Smiley in Washington going after Patty Murray. So the trend lines of a large red wave continue to build. And now, Buck, Democrats are getting nervous. So they have deployed their secret weapon. Kamala Harris has been on the sidelines for a couple of weeks. They trotted her out to have a press conference today, standing in front of a yellow school bus. I'm not making this up. Listen.
Here's the thing. Who doesn't love a yellow school bus, right? Can you raise your hand if you love a yellow school bus, right? Just, there's something about and most of us, many of us went to school on the yellow school bus, right? And it's part of our experience growing up. It's part of, a nostalgia and a memory.
I mean, it is true. The wheels on the school bus go round and round. Round and round.
She may be, Buck, the fakest politician on the planet. She desperately craves authenticity, yet is so fundamentally inauthentic and I think uncomfortable in her own skin that everything she does, it's like when she was talking about, you can see the dots on the moon or whatever. Remember the NASA acting she did? She's really, really bad at just being normal. And it comes across every time she speaks. And that's why I think Democrats have been hiding her right now, because they were hoping they wouldn't have to deal with her going viral. They thought they could put her in front of a school bus and she couldn't say anything that stupid. And there you go. There's the wheels on the bus go round and round indeed. And you know who has the wheels on the bus going round and round? Mike Lindell. He's got every single product that you could basically want available at MyPillow.com right now. And they came and took his cell phone when he was in the parking lot of a Hardee's. The government seized his cell phone. Think about how crazy that is. The guy is just trying to go to Hardee's. Government is upset about his politics, and they came and took his cell phone, but he's still standing up and fighting. And right now, he's got an incredible offer for all of you on the Giza Dream Sheets. They come with a 60-day money-back guarantee, and you can get them. You go to Clay and Buck, use the code at MyPillow.com. Again, Clay and Buck is the code. 60-day money-back guarantee. Clay and Buck. Go to mypillow.com. Get hooked up on these Giza Dream Sheets today. mypillow.com. Code Clay and Buck.
Senator Ted Cruz of Texas joins us now on Clay and Buck. Senator Cruz, you got a new book out, Justice Corrupted, How the Left Weaponized Our Legal System, and you are on your Truth and Courage bus tour, which is currently in Tennessee. So the book, tell us a bit about this one, because we talk about the weaponization of the bureaucracy and the judiciary on a regular basis. You're a man who knows how this stuff works in detail.
Well, the book came out yesterday, and it details exactly how Barack Obama and now Joe Biden have politicized the Department of Justice and the FBI and the CIA and the IRS and are using them as weapons to attack their political enemies. And it takes you inside the corruption. The book starts off with what happened in Loudoun County, Virginia. And we all remember Loudoun County, Virginia, a 14-year-old girl was sexually assaulted in school by a boy wearing a skirt in the girls' bathroom. The school denied it happened. In fact, they transferred the boy to another school where he assaulted another little girl. And the parents went to the school board expressing outrage because the school was lying, insisting it never occurred. The father rightly pointed out, he said, my daughter was raped at your school and you're not doing a damn thing about it. They responded by throwing him to the ground, handcuffing him, and arresting the father. What followed was the National Association of School Boards sent a letter to the Biden administration asking them to target parents who go to school boards, target them as domestic terrorists using the Patriot Act. And 6 days later, Merrick Garland moved like quicksilver, sent a formal memo directing the FBI to go after and target parents. It was an abuse of power, and they're doing it right now. If parents who are going to school boards and speaking out against sexual assault, speaking out against critical race theory, speaking out against schools that shut down for months or more and refuse to teach, and the Biden administration is using the FBI as their enforcers. We obviously have seen the FBI raiding President Trump's personal home in Mar-a-Lago. That's never happened before in history. We see the FBI raiding pro-life activist homes, arriving with machine guns drawn and arresting them in front of their crying children. It is profoundly dangerous, and it's getting worse and worse each day.
Senator, appreciate you coming on. Last time Buck and I hung out with you was the Texas and Alabama football game, which was an outstanding game. I just saw that you were watching your Astros. You're a big Houston Astros fan. They're in the World Series. Watched them take out the Yankees, and you also went on The View. So I'm curious for the combo there. Were you surprised that The View let you on? And was the reception better in Yankee Stadium or in front of The View audience from your perspective? I give you credit for going into the Lions Den in both cases.
Well, I have to admit that 24 hours is some of the most fun I've ever had in my life. The reception was much, much better in Yankee Stadium. So I went to Game 4 of the LCS, and I was seated right behind home plate and in bright orange Astros colors. I'm a diehard Astros fan. I've been since I was a little kid. And look, you go to Yankee Stadium on the fourth game of what ended up being a sweep and knocking the Yankees out. You're going to get you're going to prompt some reactions, and so there were more than a few people who suggested that I do something that's anatomically impossible. I get that. That was not a surprise. What was interesting is there were probably, I would say, about 150 people who came up and wanted selfies with me. Yankees fans, most of them said they couldn't stand the Astros, but they wanted a picture anyway. So the reception, by and large, was actually quite remarkably positive. Although, of course, people had fun also yelling about, because I was not a shy fan. You know, you and I have been to sports games together, and when Texas played Alabama, I root loudly for Texas. And when Houston plays New York, I root loudly for Houston. So every time we got a hit or got a Yankee out, I was standing and cheering. But that's part of sports and part of the fun. The View was an absolute circus. And it was great fun. I went on there to discuss the new book, Justice Corrupted. And the reason I did is because I think conservatives, we need to reach out and connect with a lot more people than just the party faithful, than just the folks watching Fox News each night. We need to talk with young people and Hispanics and African Americans and suburban moms. And there are millions of viewers, many of them suburban moms, who watch The View and who get one very, very partisan dose of propaganda. And so I think it was valuable to go on there and present an alternative view. I encourage folks, I said, read the book, Justice Corrupted, and learn the facts about how Barack Obama used the IRS to target conservatives, how Joe Biden has used the Department of Justice and FBI to go after and persecute his political enemies, and understand. And it was lively. I mean, to say the hosts went after me would be a mild statement. We actually had multiple protesters stand up and scream expletives, ironically, the same expletives that the Yankees fan had screamed the night before.
Expletive collusion.
But, okay, for example, Whoopi Goldberg, like most hardcore leftists, is obsessed with January 6th. And at one point she was yelling at me that, your side riots and engages in violence. Our side doesn't riot. And I just said to start laughing. And I said, did I miss an entire year of Antifa riots as cities burned all across America? And Whoopi looked at me and said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what an Antifa riot is, which is just bizarre. But that's the kind of political propaganda that the people who watch that show receive. And so it was a good chance for them to hear the truth and get around the propaganda.
We're speaking to Senator Ted Cruz. His book just came out yesterday, Justice Corrupted, How the Left Weaponized Our Legal System. Senator, we got a big election in less than 2 weeks. We talk about it here every day in detail. We just wanted your 30,000-foot view of what you're seeing and what you're expecting is going to shake out. We're
going to win. We're going to see, I think, an historic victory. As you know, I'm in the middle of a month-long nationwide 17-state bus tour. We started in Texas. We went from Texas to New Mexico, to Arizona, to Nevada, to Utah, to Kansas, to Missouri, to Iowa, to Ohio, to Maryland, to Virginia, to North Carolina. We're in Tennessee right now. We got a big rally tonight in Tennessee. Then we go to Georgia. Then we go to Florida. Then we go to Michigan. Then we go back to Utah. Then we go back to the great state of Texas. Everywhere we're going, we are seeing packed houses. We're seeing people energized. I'm doing rallies for Senate candidates and House candidates. I'm not on the ballot this time, so I'm just trying to help others win. I think Republicans are going to retake the House, and we're going to retake the Senate. And I think people are really unhappy about the path we're on and the radical policies coming from this White House.
So everybody out there who's listening to us right now in the Nashville area, I'm going to be there with Senator Cruz, also the next congressman from the 5th Congressional District in Tennessee, which includes much of Nashville, Andy Ogles. Should be a lot of fun. We're going to have a big turnout, and that's going to be in Franklin, Tennessee at the Factory tonight starting about 6. It may already be sold out. I'm not even sure. I know they're going to have like 1,000 people there or something, I was told. But just FYI for anybody in the Nashville area that wants to go. Quickly here, Senator, you guys, as part of your campaign, endorsed, I believe, 25 different congressional candidates.
Yep.
We were talking about the over-under of how many of those would win. How do you think those 25 that you guys have supported all over the country are going to do based on the trend lines that you're seeing?
Look, I feel really good. I think all 25 could win, and I think we will see a substantial majority of them are likely to win come November. What I'm trying to do is support the strongest conservatives who can win, because we need not just to take majorities, we need real leaders. When we have a majority, we need to use that majority. I'll say the rally tonight in Franklin, Tennessee, you can get the information at tcbustour.com. It gives you all the stops on the bus tour. So come out. The tickets are free. And let me also just encourage your listeners on the book, Justice Corrupted. one of the things it does is it gives the inside story of January 6th. It's the first book that's been written by someone who was an active participant. I was standing on the Senate floor leading the Senate objections. I describe how President Trump asked me to personally argue the U.S. Supreme Court case had the court taken the case, and I walk people through the facts of voter fraud, the evidence, the law. I walk them through the abuses of power in the Biden Justice Department, what's happening right now, the leak of the Supreme Court decision. And so this book is designed to give you the tools when you're talking to your friends and your colleagues and your neighbors and urging them come out and vote. This book is designed to give you the information to counter the media propaganda. So go to Amazon, go to Barnes & Noble, go to wherever you buy your books and buy Justice Corrupted. It's a fun read. It's very readable. It has a lot of facts in it, and it brings you behind the curtain, behind the scenes to know what's really happening in these fundamental battles.
Senator, see you tonight, and it should be a fun next 13 days, I'm sure, for you on the bus tour.
I'll see you tonight. Look forward to it.
That's Senator Ted Cruz. Will be in Franklin, tcbustour.com. You can check that out. Free tickets. Lots of people going to be there at the factory. True or false? Our founding fathers debated and wrote on topics that include rights, immigration, foreign policy, sex, and marriage. The answer, true for each of those topics. How do we know that? Because smart professors at Hillsdale College have been leading course conversation on the words of our founding fathers and comparing our issues today to those in the 1700s and finding one connection after another. One of the great many things that these professors at Hillsdale do is they adapt their in-person teaching for an online video series for those of you that aren't on campus and want to be able to watch in the comfort and convenience of your home. Easy, free, and will help to educate you on our nation's history. The latest course is called The Real American Founding, A Conversation. You can watch a trailer video, find out if it's for you, of The Real American Founding, A Conversation, and sign up for this completely free online course at clayandbuck4hillsdale.com. That's Clay and Buck, FOR, for Hillsdale.com. Do it today.
Hey, Ben Ferguson here, and if you've ever wanted to know what's actually happening in Washington, D.C., what our options are to fight back against the Biden regime, and how you can get involved, well, now there's a way to do it 3 days a week with an amazing senator by the name of Ted Cruz. That's right. Verdict with Ted Cruz is now expanding to 3 days a week, and I'm going to be his co-host. We would love for you to join us as we pull back the curtain and fight to hold the Biden regime accountable. You want to know what the options are in Washington to hold not only Biden accountable, but even Hunter Biden. You want to know what's happening with foreign policy, with Ukraine and Russia. You want to know what's happening when it comes to gas prices. 3 days a week, you'll hear from the top conservative senator in Congress, Senator Ted Cruz. So be sure to listen to Verdict with Ted Cruz on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Download it now.
Welcome back in. Closing out the Wednesday edition of the program. Our thanks to Heidi Gernal as well as Senator Ted Cruz, both for joining us. We'll continue to have fantastic guests as we count down the final 13 days between now and the midterms. Buck's going to come down to Nashville. We're going to have a good time celebrating election night. We'll be together. And it should be a good time. I think increasingly the red wave is building, and turnout is actually pretty massive, Buck. So massive, in fact, that Joe Biden's Jim Crow 2.0, remember that whole business where he was walking around? He said, this is not even Jim Crow. This is Jim Eagle. Yeah, so direct and total lie. Our good friend Corinne Jean-Pierre was asked about that. Hey, you know, Joe Biden said that this was Jim Crow 2.0 down in Georgia. It cost the Atlanta Braves the All-Star game. And actually, voter turnout has skyrocketed. And Corinne Jean-Pierre was asked directly about that. Here's what she had to say, Buck.
Speaking generally, of course, more broadly, high turnout and voter suppression can take place at the same time. They don't have to be, one doesn't have to happen on its own. They could be happening at the same time. But I'll leave it there without being able to really dig into the politics of this.
Yes, Clay, in Democrat land, when the racist voter suppression efforts result in elevated turnout in general, and specifically even elevated African-American turnout, that is just evidence of the success of the voter suppression. What?
It's an insanely dumb argument, but that's where they're left because, Buck, they won't just admit, you know what? We jumped the gun. We bought the lie. This is not remotely true. Actually, overall turnout is skyrocketing. Also,
but can I say this isn't new? But they've done this. They did this in the Carolinas too. I think it was North Carolina where they said, "Oh, it's going to destroy turnout for African American voters because they had some voter integrity measures, ID or something along those lines." Total lie. That was true 10 years ago. It's true now. It's true then. It's always true.
It's disappointing that Democrats would lie, not surprising when their lie is directly contradicted by the factual evidence. What's really disappointing is all of the media, Buck, who bought into this lie and spread it and propagated it to the degree that the idiots at Major League Baseball pulled the All-Star game from Atlanta when they were going to honor Hank Aaron. They're not even going to acknowledge that they got it completely wrong. All right, that's all the political realm. Our crew tracked down a call. This may end up saving a lot of your lives. And by a lot of yours, I probably mean none of yours. But in the event that it does, I want you to call in and let us know. So we had a call a while back. Jungle Terry from Cleveland, Ohio. He said, this is what you do. We were talking earlier about the python hunt, the boa constrictor hunt that's going on in the Everglades. If you were attacked by a python or a boa constrictor, what should you do? Jungle Terry told us.
Okay, so you save the alligator and the python moves from trying to attack the alligator to attacking you?
Yeah, what'll happen is once I got the alligator released from the snake, he looked at me like, well, I'm in that feeding mode, and he had grabbed me at the time, and then, I'm like, well, it's just me in the barn with this big guy. What do I do? And I'm like, well, I'm dragging him down to the pond, and about maybe 300 feet away from the building, we have a lake. And I go into this lake with my whole garb on. I'm getting ready to do school shows for the kids all day. Wife, I'm down there, and she comes out on the porch, and she looks at me, and the only thing she sees is my head and my hat. And she's like looking at me like, what are you doing? You got to go to work. And I lift up just the tail of my python, and she's like, oh, my God. I go,
so you thought you can drown the python? Is that what you were thinking you were going to have to do? Or he lets go of you because he starts to drown?
They won't drown themselves. They're going to let go. But sometimes, because they can take in so much air, it could take a while. So it took about 10 minutes.
Can I just tell you, that is an extreme sport, okay? The waterboarding of the python that is wrapped around you for 10 minutes, that is some next level stuff. Like, I do not sign me up for that one. There is no amount of money.
Can you imagine being so calm when a python had you wrapped and was trying to strangle you that you're like, all right, I guess I'm going to have to walk into the lake until he runs out of air, and then he'll let me go, and then I'll be fine. That is an amazing call that we had.
Yeah, and it's just, important safety tip for everybody. If you don't happen to have, your Smith & Wesson 500 with you at the time, and the python wraps itself around you, find a bathtub and just be patient. Just try to dunk it.
It would also be tough, I think, when a python's on you, Buck, to even fire a gun round without shooting yourself, too, right? I mean, that would be tough in and of itself.
You definitely don't want, important safety tip, don't want to point the firearm at the snake that is coiled around your chest. Yes, you're going to have to. I think there was that person in Pennsylvania whose pet snake turned on him or her, and the cop showed up, and they had to set it up for a headshot.
Yeah.
But, yeah. No, don't, pet giant boa constrictor as a pet. I just don't think that's really the move. I don't know. I don't want to be in people's business, but get a gerbil or
get rid of your snakes. I'm just saying, I'm a snakeist. Get rid of them. We'll bring the rest 12 days out tomorrow. Playing Buck.